No pizza, no cake, and no soup for the LGBTQ community. Today we're going to be looking at Indiana's Religious Freedom Restoration Act and really discuss what I think is the real problem of this whole media blow-up. So stay tuned and listen right here on the Scott Stedman podcast. Good morning. It is April 6, 2015. It is about 10 o'clock in the morning, and it is a beautiful, warm, sunny day here in the mountains of Stanton, Virginia. I'm glad you're here to listen. Today we're going to talk about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that was passed in Indiana about a couple weeks ago. And being a graduate of Anderson University, which is in Anderson, Indiana, I have a lot of friends who still live in Indiana. And obviously when this bill was looming that it was going to be voted on by Governor Pence, there's a lot of people saying this is a bad law. We should not write this in. We should not do this. And there has been like some discussion that there was going to be some owners who were going to deny services to basically LGBTQ couples, or just an individual or anybody. And just a side note, can anybody tell me what Q is? I know what LBGT is, but I don't know what Q is. So if anybody can let me know what Q stands for, and actually what is a Q, I know it's a letter, but what? Never mind. I just don't understand what Q is in that LBGTQ community. So please, if someone can let me know what a Q is, I would greatly appreciate it. But going back, everyone was against this bill before it got signed, and right when the bill finally passed and got signed in Indiana, when Governor Pence signed it, it just caused not only a blow up in the Indiana state, and obviously all my friends were writing about it, but even nationally, and I believe internationally too, this whole thing just blew up. And I couldn't even look anywhere for a couple of weeks. And even now, I'm still seeing people talking about this. It just seemed like everyone was talking about it. There's people who are talking about it from a Christian perspective. There's people who are talking about it from an LGBTQ perspective. There are people talking about it from like a legal perspective or a governmental perspective that didn't have any ties to both the Christian community or the LGBTQ community. And it just really has caused a lot of fighting and just a lot of people just saying hurtful things. And especially recently, like I was reading about how after the bill was passed, the one cake shop in Indiana, just the cake shop in Indiana that was actually denying a gay couple who wanted to get married, and they said, no, we're not going to make you a wedding cake for your gay wedding because it's against our religious beliefs. We are a Christian baking company. And then when that happened, you already saw people on Yelp or people basically protesting this cake shop. They started to lose business, but then there's other people who are raising money for these people. And I believe I read an article, and half the times when I read stuff, I don't know if it's legit news or if it's someone's opinion, because half the time it doesn't even matter anymore, which I think is another problem to discuss another day. But it just seemed like, they raised $500,000 in donations to keep the cake shop afloat because people were supporting them for standing up for their religious beliefs. And with that, and I guess they ended up closing shop because they wanted, they were fearing for their lives because people were throwing threats at them. So they closed up shop with about half $500,000 in their pocket. So they closed up shop and just kind of went into hiding. And when I look at this issue, it really made me think about a problem that has been going on in our world as of late. I was actually reading a book. Actually, I wouldn't say I was reading the book. I've read this book a long time ago, back when I was in Anderson, Indiana, which was called What's So Amazing About Grace by Philip Yancey. And Philip Yancey has a section in his book where he really talks about the subject of homosexuality. And I just thought about it recently because I was actually watching a video series on that book because I was thinking about some, Sunday school or Wednesday Bible study material to go through that. And I happened to watch that segment where they address that homosexuality issue. And it's not really addressing the issue. It was more basically talking about grace. How do we extend grace to people who have different beliefs or have different lifestyles than what we're used to? And it was just basically Philip Yancey talking, and it also had Mel White, which I've been familiar with Mel White's work, especially just with his past and, him being an evangelical leader, and then he ended up coming out of the closet and is now a gay minister and is kind of, is living the LGBT lifestyle and still a part of the Christian community as a gay man. And I was thinking how in that thing they were talking about how, and even Philip Yancey goes, I don't understand, because Philip Yancey's from the evangelical circles, and Mel White knew that Philip Yancey ran through those evangelical circles, and Philip Yancey says, me and my wife didn't understand. We didn't understand what was going on. We didn't understand, how did this happen? But he says, but through grace, I continue to extend love and mercy to Mel White, and Mel continues to do that to me. So in a way, even though they have both different belief systems, they continue to stay friends, and they continue to work together to try to build at least some type of middle ground, which the conversation between the Christian community and the LGBTQ community, they can start having discussions in a safe place where they don't feel like that they're being persecuted or they feel like being threatened. And that book was written, I remember reading that book and watching that video back in early 2000. It is now 2015, so it would have been over 10 years since I've seen that. And it just seems like this issue between the Christians and the LGBT community, whether it's gay marriage or baking a cake or the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, it just seems like any time when or even Chick-fil-A, it just seems like there's always this butting of heads that's happening. And it just made me think that, the real issue is not necessarily the cake baking. The real issue is not necessarily the gay marriage. I think the real issue is, why can't we get along? Why can't we get to this middle ground where we can start to have a discussion? And at the end, it's okay that if we still don't agree with each other. That's okay. We can agree to disagree, but we can still try to show love to people who are different than us, who have a different belief system than us. But I feel like we just don't get to that. We just can't get to that point because we live in a world where it's all about us versus them, and there's no reconciliation. I think that's the problem. We have a reconciliation problem. That doesn't mean that we have to conform to anybody's beliefs, or we have to go with what's popular or anything else, but let's at least have the conversation. I apologize for the odd break in this podcast. My office phone was ringing, and I had to stop recording, and it ended up being just junk mail, like a pre-recorded message about tax law. And it's like, I really don't want to have to deal with that, because that's not the issue I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about taxes, or am I? There's something interesting. Actually, my theater professor, Ron Johnston, actually posted this article. It's the first time I saw it with all the other thousands of posts that have to do with this Religious Freedom Restoration Act that was passed in Indiana, since Ron lives in Indiana. And there's this article that's actually called "Bake for Them Too," and it's the author is Jessica Kantrowitz, and I do apologize, Jessica, if you ever listen to this, that I butchered your name. I do apologize. But she actually started writing about this interesting thing. It's from Matthew 5:41, and the verse is, "If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles." And obviously, the image that she put on here is a cake, and it says, "If anyone forces you to bake a cake for a gay wedding, bake for them too." And really what she talks about in this article, she started talking about Jesus' time, and that under Roman rule, how even though the Romans were able to let the Israelites, to allow them to live and practice their faith, they had to pay taxes to Caesar, and they had to obey the Roman laws. And obviously the Israelites thought the Romans were evil and ungodly, and that they had no place ruling over God's chosen people and God's chosen nation. Throughout history, we have seen Israel be this great kingdom that we read in 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, and even 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And then when we start getting into the prophets in the Old Testament, we really start to see a bunch of Israel start to lose its kingdom in a way. They were oppressed by the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans. So really this idea of Israel being this promised land that we've read about in Exodus and Joshua and even the book of Judges, it's not like that anymore. But there's still a lot of Israelites who believe that this was God's chosen, that this is the promised land, this is God's chosen nation for his chosen people, and they have to live their lives according to Roman law. And Jessica mentions that one of the Roman laws state that any person could be required to drop whatever they're doing and help carry a Roman soldier's equipment for up to 1 mile. So, I mean, imagine that. You're an Israelite, you're working to try to provide for your family, or maybe you're helping someone else out, maybe a charitable thing. You're helping another Israelite brother or sister with something, and then this Roman soldier goes, "Hey, you carry my stuff," and they have to do it by law. And a lot of people were upset and angry about this. But then Jesus, when he's giving his Sermon on the Mount, he says, go with them. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. And actually the full verse is right here. He says this. He says, "If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." So, and basically the whole point, and obviously I'll post the link on my notes for the show. I'll go ahead and post the link to this article. But it's interesting because, and really, the thing is really the basic the thing that goes to this is, so is someone saying, basically, if the law is saying you need to bake a cake for anybody, even if it's somebody whose lifestyle is against your religious beliefs, then maybe you should do that. And I think there's also a thing that's like, let your love, Basically let your love, oh, actually right here, where it says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. And I feel like, it's through love. And isn't it, I believe it's Peter, and even in the book of, I'm trying to think of where it's at off the top of my head, but there's a scripture that says, love covers a multitude of sins. I believe that's in Romans. But so if we truly believe as Christians that love can cover a multitude of sins, then maybe we should start showing love to all people. We should show love not only to the LGBT community, but let's show love to those who practice Islam. Let's show love to the guy who cut us off in traffic. Let us show love to that coworker who gets on our nerves, who's always saying hurtful things to them. Counteract it with love, because in a way, love is always powerful than hate. Love is always powerful than religion. Love is powerful than theology or philosophy or ideology. Love is powerful than all of that. And I believe, and if you have the faith and you believe that loving someone is going to help change the hearts and mind of people, then why not start with love and not worry about any of the rest of the stuff? So yeah, it's just, and again, it all comes down to, can we find that middle ground, so that loving middle ground where we can have a safe space to talk to people who have different ideas, different beliefs than another person, and actually have those discussions. It even made me think, actually, when I was thinking about this whole Restoration Act thing, it made me think about the peace accords in Ireland. Now, I don't know all the details about it, but obviously what we know from history is that the Protestants and the Catholics in Ireland hated each other, almost to the point where they were killing each other. And there's a couple of people who started these peace accord acts to really try to get peace back in Ireland, especially peace between the Protestants and the Catholics. And I don't know who the guy was, but my wife was actually listening to a podcast, and he was talking, and they were talking about, how they got to writing these peace accords and everything. And one of the things he says is when they were writing these peace accords, they were trying to do it through the religious scope, because again, Protestants and Catholics both worship Jesus, both worship God. However, their structure, they have different theology or different teachings about in their churches, and that was what was causing a lot of the fighting. But they were getting nowhere with that. So then they said, when we started to look things through a social lens, lens, then people started to see things different, because it's not like, oh, we're killing those filthy Catholics or we're killing those dirty Protestants. It's we're taking away human life. And sometimes that's a little bit harder to swallow, because you yourself are a human and you wouldn't want someone to forcefully take your life. Then why are you taking someone else's life? So that's how they were able to get the peace accords, because they had to change their lens. They had to change their focus. They still, really, it came to peace between the Protestants and Catholics. And even now, there's still some tension in there, but there's not as much killings or bombings or anything that's happening like there was, maybe 15, 20 years ago. But they had to change their perspective, but they still came to the same goal. And it just makes me think about all the times when there's these fights and discussions over like this religious freedom restoration act or whatever it's called now. I don't even know what it is anymore. But we just don't get to that place. We can't ever get to that place where we can actually have a conversation, where we can start to build a bridge to really connect with people who may have different beliefs or different ideals than us. So how do we get there? I have no idea. My guess is, love your neighbor as yourself and love your enemy as well. Maybe that's a start, but who knows? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But actually, I would like to hear your thoughts. Is it possible for us in this generation, in this culture, is it possible for us to be able to have a place of reconciliation? Is there a place where we can create a non-threatening community of love to really discuss these issues? Or is that not even possible anymore? I would like to hear your thoughts, and you can go ahead and post your thoughts on my website, thescottstedman.com. Obviously, just go ahead and write in the comments. If you'd like to send me an email, on that webpage there's a link that you can click on to email me, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, I don't think I could hear anything new because I've pretty much heard everyone's thoughts from so many different perspectives, but I still want to hear yours because really, I just want to hear, can we find a middle ground? Is it possible to find that middle ground? And really, that's what I like to know. And if there is, then how can we achieve that middle ground? So I'd like to hear your thoughts. And again, thank you so much for listening. I know I was a little bit long-winded, and again, I do apologize for the interruption with my phone ringing that kind of caused a disturbance in the podcast. But again, I appreciate all of you who listen, and I would like to hear from you soon. All right, you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you later.